Hey everyone, Duke here, and today we're going to go over how to clear this week's Grandmaster Nightfall, Glassway. This week is also double loot week for Nightfalls, so it's going to be a great week to stock up on enhancement prisms, ascendant shards, and exotics for going into Lightfall. This week's Nightfall weapon is the DFA, which honestly I'm not overly excited about. I love my Time-Lost Fatebringer, and it doesn't really feel like this weapon has the rolls to compete with it. One positive is it does have the Vanguard Vindication and Stunning Recovery origin traits to give it a boost compared to Fatebringer not having any origin traits. So if you either don't have a Time-Lost Fatebringer or can make good use of these origin traits, DFA can be something to look at adding to your arsenal. I will look to keep one roll just to have, with the third column perk either being Perpetual Motion or Outlaw for reload speed, and my fourth column perk of either Time Payload or Rampage for some extra damage. Now let's talk about Glassway itself. We're going to go over the boss room step by step, as this boss room can be extremely overwhelming if unprepared. As with every activity with champions this season, Lucent Finisher on at least one person is going to be huge to keep stocked up on heavy ammo. The champions in this strike are Barrier and Overloads with Void Burn. There are a few Solar Shielded Shanks before the boss room and Arc Shielded Harpies in the boss room. One person on Witherhoard with Weaken Clear can be extremely helpful for the boss room itself in terms of making things a lot less painful. Just note that this person will not be able to run a barrier weapon in that case, as everyone absolutely needs to have an overload weapon for this boss room. The loadout I've stuck with for doing helps though is Arbalist, a Solar Scout Rifle, and either a Void Rocket or a Void Linear Fusion Rifle. This loadout allows for taking down all champions, as well as Wyverns in the boss room. It makes it easier, and if running Witherhoard, I would just switch out Arbalist for Witherhoard. Most of the strike leading up to the boss room is reasonably straightforward, but one important tip I will give is for the plate section right before the boss room. Assigning one person to stand on the plate and get off once any enemies have spawned, immediately taking out that set of enemies, and then getting back on the plate until the next set of enemies spawn to repeat the process will make easy work of this section. Do note that there is cover behind the plate on both the left and right sides that can be used to protect yourself from the enemies as you take them down. Now for the boss room. When you first enter the boss room, you'll have to take down one overload and a few weaker enemies. After all these enemies are defeated, the two bosses will spawn and you will want to be in the left side room, ready for the first set of overloads. Taking down the overload that spawns out of the left portal right away can make this first part easier so that you just have to look for and then take down the other overload. Do note that there's kind of three ways that enemies can get in your room in this section, on either the left side that you're kind of looking at from the portal, the middle, or the right side, and kind of keeping your team split up and making sure you have eyes on all three sides whenever you're looking for a specific enemy is going to be extremely crucial. Next up, you're going to do some damage to the mini-boss. 2 more overloads will spawn when you get the mini-boss down to about half of its first HP bar. To make things a bit easier, you should push the mini-boss all the way down to that first third health bar, and then immediately direct your attention to the 2 newly spawned overloads. Making sure to have eyes on the overloads is extremely helpful to make sure you don't get sandwiched and flanked by one overload while taking down the other one. Basically, just make sure that all 3 people don't get too locked into the current enemy that you're taking down, and make sure that at least one person is still on the lookout for the other overload in this case, or wyvern in some cases later, to be coming and potentially trying to flank you. Once both overloads have been dealt with, you'll need to push the big boss down to 2/3 HP. This is where Witherhoard can really shine, but either bringing the boss far left and then shooting it from the safety of this room, or going across and using the ledge on the staircase from the right side room, or again, just slowly doing damage in any way you can, are all viable strats here. Note that with Witherhoard, you can actually just tag the shield of the boss, and the tick damage of Witherhoard will still apply to the boss, even though the shield is technically immune. Also, don't forget that the anti-barrier weapons you'll be using will be able to do damage through this shield as well. After pushing the big boss to teleport away, the mini-boss, 2 wyverns, and 2 anti-barrier champions will spawn. Once again, melting the wyvern out of the left portal right away cuts down on this difficulty tremendously here. Prioritize getting both wyverns down over everything else, and then you can work on the 2 anti-barrier champions. This is a great time to make sure to get Lucent Finishers for heavy if you haven't been able to do that on the overloads previously, or even if you did, just extra heavy, as nothing else will be spawning here until you take these down. Plus the barriers are just quite a bit less threatening than the overloads are. Take down both anti-barriers and then continue to damage the mini-boss. Once this mini-boss is at about 50% of its total HP, 2 more wyverns and 2 anti-barriers will spawn again. Same strategy again applies, take down the left side one immediately if you can, find and take down the other wyvern, and then deal with the 2 anti-barriers. There's also a few harpies that'll spawn in here, but these shouldn't be too much of an issue. After taking down all of the enemies, go ahead and push the mini-boss down to 1/3 of its total HP. This will spawn in 2 more overloads and the big boss again. To what I'm sure is a very large surprise, you will again want to take down the left overload ASAP, then find and take down the second overload, and kill the other assorted fanatics and goblins that will have spawned in. Then you're going to want to continue to damage the big boss, get it to about 50% total HP, and now 2 more overloads will spawn again. If you can, taking down 1 overload right away, again, is a great strat and very useful. Just note that with the big boss being out on the field, this may not be possible unless you are able to either aggro it away previously or just be very careful. But again, same strategies apply. Just make sure that you find at least an overload, or preferably you find eyes on both overloads. If you can get them to both come down mid, that's pretty easy, and then you can just stun them. Use supers. Don't be afraid to use supers. Don't be afraid to use heavy at any time during this boss room. But this spot in particular is probably the most challenging set of overloads, just because the big boss is already out on the field when they spawn. So this spot, especially using heavy and using your supers if and when you have them, very helpful. One quick note is that these champions and wyverns always spawn in groups of 2, and they always spawn from the 2 separate portals. So as we talk about, you can usually want to try to get down the left side champion or wyvern first, and just because it's a little bit easier, you have a much easier angle to shoot from left side across left than trying to peek out the right side door. And if the big boss is up, or if any other enemies are up, you just have a lot less safety. But just note that these champions and wyverns will always spawn 1 from left portal and 1 from right portal. That is something that is very useful to know and take advantage of. Once all of the enemies are down, go back to damaging the big boss to 1/3 of its total HP, and this will cause it to teleport away. It will then reappear with the big boss, the mini boss, 2 wyverns, and 2 anti-barriers all spawning in. Once again, try to take down the left wyvern right away, and then find and focus down the second wyvern. From here, there's a number of strategies you can absolutely use. I usually like to just finish off the mini-boss first, which will then spawn in 2 more wyverns and 2 more barrier champs. You can also kill the big boss first, which will again spawn 2 wyverns and 2 barrier champs. I just like to kill the mini-boss because then you don't have it shooting you in the back, and you can kind of make the big boss move around to where you want it to or need to a little bit easier. Once you've taken down those 2 wyverns, at this point it is just the 4 anti-barriers and the final boss. You can have 1 guardian pull the big boss to the left side of the room, while the other 2 work on the 4 anti-barriers. Make sure to communicate to your team if the boss starts to rotate away from the left side, but it should be pretty easy to keep it interested by just standing near the left opening and shooting in the vicinity of the boss. Once the barriers have been dealt with, it's just the final boss. Keep shooting it until it's been defeated, and you will have completed the Glassway Grandmaster Nightfall. I know the boss room can feel like a doozy, but knowing the spawns and taking 1 wave at a time, as we showed here, makes this strike a lot less daunting than it may seem. I hope this video helped you take down this strike, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.